So now I want to go over to a different component and I want to go have a look at the button component. So I've got button here and it has a class name of search button, which is understandable, I guess. If I look inside app.css, I've got search button, position absolute, height 100%, right 0px, top 0px. Okay. I'm really not sure why the button is absolutely positioned, especially inside of this search bar, which is position relative, which is inside search bar wrapper, which is display flex. So I don't understand. I don't understand why you would have position absolute here. But I'm not going to critique the CSS. I'm going to stick to the JavaScript and the React side of things here. One thing though I would point out with CSS, and you might guess what it is that I really like to have my properties in alphabetical order, like so. It's not letting me do the alphabetical order thing. Weird. Anyways, so normally what I would do is I would put these all in alphabetical order as well. So I would have H, then P, then R, then T. C, F, M is fine. F above P. A at the top. P, P, and that's fine. Just once again, it's honestly something that I find so critical, just to be able to read the code a lot easier, because now I can see exactly where something is. I can tell where a section of code is. I can find it a lot more easily, and I can move things about a lot more easily, knowing exactly what I'm going to find on top or underneath a particular section of code. So just reordering it, so I have error SEARCHBAR, search bar W, search BU, search C, and then search C with label at the end. Those are all the properties in alphabetical order, and that is a lot nicer to me. Anyways, let's move on to button. We've got button over here, button.js. Okay, so first thing that I see is this button component has a JS doc declaration here. So JS doc is spelled like this. This essentially is a comment. So this is a comment, even though it has weird colors. The whole idea of this is that you write all of these things into your code, and then JS doc can generate documentation from these comments. So it can take a comment like this, and it can say, okay, this takes two props, two groups of props here. One prop is on click, and the other prop is mixed. All other props will be forwarded to the native DOM button. Okay, so that just kind of explains how this thing would be used. One thing I would point out here is these three lines should be separate, like so, and this should be on top of that, like so. That's just how I like to have them. Once again, you'll notice I style things very pedantically most of the time. I'm not perfect, but I do have a very good style guide, and I do try to follow it best I can. That's the most important thing I want you to take away here. It's not that you necessarily have to do what I do, but that if your company has a style guide, or if you decide to go for a style guide, that you should stick with it and that you should maintain that same style guide across the entirety of your code base. Don't go around doing random things in random places and not sticking through with it. For example, with JSDoc, if you're going to use it on this component, it's probably a good idea to implement it on this component as well. I'm just saying that it's probably a good idea to be consistent with what you use, as opposed to mixing and matching little bits and pieces here and there. Anyways, let's keep going and let's have a look at this page here. So, a few things I would notice here. I'm not sure if ARIA label, this one here, is actually working. So this is for accessibility purposes. However, does that work? Let me see if that works. I'm very, very skeptical as to whether that works here. So if I have a look at that, I've got button. Wow, it actually works. Honestly, I didn't expect that, because I remember you have to write them like this. Maybe I'm behind the times, but oh wait, no, wait. No. I'm wrong here. I think ARIA hyphen label. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Well, there you go. That's something I did not know, because I thought that ARIA label had to, like any property with a hyphen between it, had to be camel cased. But I guess I'm wrong. So ARIA hyphen label. There you go. So my few critiques here, my number one critique, I've already pointed out that thing here, that thing up here, down here. Okay, so I don't know. Why do people use, like when you use a functional component, why do people use the function keyword and not use arrow functions? That doesn't make sense to me, because it seems to me that an arrow function is like a function, but lighter, easier to write. It's a little bit less code, it's cleaner. Then why would you use a function? I don't understand personally why that is the case. But you know, if that's the style you want to go for, by all means go for it. Personally, I would do something like this. So const button, like so, and I would just destructure up here, and so on. Let's fix this up a bit. So I do class name and then on click, and then other props like so, and then just start writing my return statement here. I'd write it like that, but you know, each to their own. I'm not going to focus on that one. That's fine by me. However, this is kind of unnecessary because props is never being used except in here. So if it's only being used here, there's no point to do this whole thing on a separate line. So if I just do that, and then I put class name before on click, because once again, alphabetical order, except for the spread should go at the end. We can shorten by 2 lines like so. And this one here, I like to have alphabetical order for prop names. Once again, because when you have a lot of props, it becomes very, very hard to tell which one goes where. And the ... other props can go down the bottom. Sometimes you won't want to have this at the bottom. Sometimes you want to have this at the top. So let me explain what's going on here. When you put the rest operator and this group here down the very bottom of a component, what actually happens is this applies priority over all of these ones here. So that's actually a very critical difference, because now if I go into app.js, you'll notice my ARIA label is submit. If I go into app.js and I change the ARIA label, so I go here, I go ARIA label equals foobar, I save this and I check my code, you'll notice that the button ARIA label becomes foobar, except if I put this other props at the very top, what happens now is if I go back into Chrome, you'll notice it's still submit. So this is a very critical difference, and it's something to keep in mind here. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm saying that you need to understand how exactly your component is going to behave with regards to these things. So when you have other props at the top, all of these will be definitely written to your button. They will override other props. When other props goes underneath something like so, this will override those two and will be overwritten by these two. So its exact position is very important. However, I would suggest that you be careful that you don't rely too much on other props. So I generally like to put other props at the very top. And if you do want ARIA label to be replaced, I would suggest including ARIA label here. So for example, you can, I'm not sure how you would write this, but probably ARIA label. Does this work? Because you can't have variable names with that in there. So you could probably do something like this. If that would, oh, sorry, double quotes around that. If that would work. And then you can do ARIA label equals foobar, and that works fine here. So I would suggest writing code like this. And the reason that I would suggest that is because then you just removed, even though you added extra code, you removed an assumption. You removed the ability for on-click to be overwritten, for example, or you remove the ability for button type equals button to be overwritten, because you don't necessarily want these things to be overwritten. So that's what I would do. However, I don't need that functionality in this case, so I'm just going to get rid of that, and this is fine for now. This is something that kind of annoys me. So I've got a class name, I've got button, and then I've got class name all double quotes, and then there's a space here. So if class name is a non-empty, if it's, let's assume that class name is always a string. If class name is a non-empty string, then we get button space and then another class name, which works fine, right? Except if class name is empty or it's null or it's something falsy, then we get button with a space after it, and that annoys me, right? Because to me that shows, I guess, a lack of care. So if my class name is empty, you'll notice I get class button and then space, and that to me, that's one of the most icky, kind of things that you can have here, and it's very, very gross. So what I suggest and what I normally do is I would control C this, I would go npm I, and I would include something called class names. So class names here is essentially going to do that kind of heavy lifting for me. And I'm just going to wait for that to install, and then npm start this again. Cool. Now let's go back here, and I'm going to write up here, import class names. Notice I go to the very top because class name starts with C. So if you just keep that in mind, you won't have to reorder all the time. And you go class names, button, class name. And you don't even need to worry about it being null. It will automatically pick up on it and figure out what exactly it needs to do. So now you'll notice I've got button space search button. So class names is really handy and a really small utility. That's great for including inside of your React app. I've got onClick here. This is fine. Type is fine. SVG is fine as well. Like that to me isn't too big of a deal. That's fine. That's all fine. That's all good. So now this component, essentially that is a wrap on my critique for this. Just a few little things here and there. A lot of things to just kind of keep in mind with code like this.